Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. This is a repot under instructions. Lynn Smith, who's a good friend and the chairman of Wessex Orchid Society, grows more Masdevallias and Draculas than you could ever shake a stick at, and the Masdevallia Copperwing is one that she has several of, and she said for some reason this one objects to being too wet, which sounds odd for a Masdevallia, but these things do happen, and it's highly liable to grow a much better root system in a much smaller pot that dries quicker and allow that little bit of drying in between, which this doesn't. That amount of moss for such a small plant is taking like 2 weeks to dry out, and as we all know, moss has an element of acidity in it. When it stays wet, the longer it stays wet, the more the pH is dropping. So the pH in that pot currently could be way lower than it ought to be. Obviously in the natural environment it gets rain, and rain is fresh and washes through, which doesn't happen in a pot. It's all very well saying, well, you could flush it through with some clean water, but then it's even wetter, isn't it? So the idea, I was told, is get it in the smallest pot you can get it in. It will probably establish a lot quicker and get a decent root system under it, which at the moment I don't think it's got. I hope it's just going to tap out, yes. And I'm not going to take all the moss off. I'm going to tease it and see where we get to and see if we do. I'd forgotten I'd done that. The actual media that it was planted in was actually a mix of bark and moss, and then it was wrapped inside more moss, and it is soaking wet, and there are not good roots, and that's got a distinct mushroomy smell to it. These are not good roots, not good at all. So what we've got to try and do, there's a couple of relatively new roots there. I'm not going to start trimming and mucking about. I'm just going to get it in some new moss. Yeah, that's not the smell of moss that's gone off, it's the smell of damp. In other words, too wet, too long. I'm just going to rescue a little bit of the live moss off the top because I haven't got much, and I do want some live moss in the pot, or at least around the top of it. It looks pretty. Right, so there's our plant. That's all it's going to get. It's just going to get taken out and redone in a much smaller pot with the normal zombie moss and some of the live moss mixed in. So we'll have a little bit in the bottom just so that the roots have got something to sit on, but not much. And from memory, the guy we had, the specialist guy who grows and produces his own hybrid Masdevallias, quite honestly, what he would do was hold that in there like that and just flop some of that moss in and tap the pot. That would be it. No pressing, no compression whatsoever. And that's how he grew his, in the loosest moss you could imagine. You could see through them almost with the amount of air that was left in the pot. And it worked for him, and he's what I call a specialist grower. That's what he grows. I don't think he grows much else at all. So right, so now what I'm going to do is a bit of the green, which might not even be live moss, it might be algae. But it's going back in there whether it likes it or not. And some of the, I'm going to have to go and raid a forest again. My amount of live moss is getting very thin on the ground. Very thin, and because it's so thin in the tray, it's not really growing. It hasn't got any depth to it, which is a bit of a nuisance. So we just stir that in a little bit so that there's some of the live moss in the pot and some that will end up on top. And then I'm just going to flop that in there. What he did was just fold it in the sides like that. Just literally fold it over the side. He did give us a bit of a demo. Now on some of them with a good root system, he did actually put a wrap around those roots to start, and then just fold some in over the sides. Are we deep enough? No pressing, just gently to arrange the moss, not squash the roots in. And tap the pot. Right, I'll put a bit more live moss on the top as I've still got a bit spare. Some properties in live moss that seem to aid plants getting going. It's a sterilisation type process that moss provides. I mean, moss is a brilliant field dressing. If you get injured in the middle of nowhere and you can find some moss, just whack it on there. Don't worry about it being clean, just get it on there. It'll help sterilise. Right, so believe it or not, that is it. And we'll see. And while we're at it, Lynn made her first YouTube video. Yay! So we've got a brand new channel, which I will now plug, Lynn Smith. I'll put a link to it on this video actually, that's the easiest way. It's much easier to click a link than go aimlessly searching in amongst the millions of YouTube channels. So I'll put a link to it, but I think she will get going on YouTube. The video was linked in on the Facebook group as well, and a few firm instructions were left by Roger for those in the Facebook group to go and have a look and subscribe, leave a comment. It is incredibly difficult when you start a channel. As I said, it can be very disheartening. You can spend quite a long time putting your video together, leave it 24 hours, come back and you've got 5 views and 1 like. It's disheartening, but you've got to keep going or it won't go anywhere. If you just stop, that'll be it. Nothing will happen. You've got to work. It takes time, and sometimes a bit of a plug from a channel with perhaps a few more subscribers is a little bonus. Now, I have one and one only New Year's resolution. Every time a plant comes in the kitchen for any reason, it will get a tag put on it. And every now and again I'm going to have a bit of a purge in a watering session, which does slow me up, and get everything tagged up. I'm getting fed up with picking up plants to show something, to show viewers and saying, and this is, I've forgotten. But this is Masdevallia Copperwing. And hopefully that now will be tempted into producing a better root system. That's almost impossible for that small amount of moss to stay too wet for too long. So the instructions were, get it in a small pot, get it in basically some new moss, give it a fresh start, and then put it inside a black pot. 2 reasons: shut the light out, stop the moss getting all covered in algae and all that sort of stuff, it helps, but also it provides a funnel effect. That might not seem much, but inside this little area here, up to about there, is a microclimate, and as the water is evaporating off that moss, it's keeping that plant with a little bit more humidity than it would have had without that effect. Tiny little microclimate could be the difference between the leaves dehydrating and not. So there we go, the first repot of 2020. Don't expect thousands of more repots. Virtually every plant in a pot last year got repotted sometime during last year, and many of those will stay in the pot for 2 years because they're heavy on the bark, very light on the moss. Those that were heavy on the moss might get done again in 2020. Holy clay pots, next to no repots. They're all fine. I think I've got 2 that are attempting to get out of their pots. We might need to deal with those, but not many. Mounts, I very rarely remount something. I do occasionally refresh the moss when it's been on there a long time, just tease off the old and tie some new moss in. But yeah, not a huge amount going on the repot front, and I'll state it now, and I'll get shot down many times I suspect. I'm not buying loads of new orchids in 2020. I've said that at the beginning of 2019, the beginning of 2018, the beginning of 2017. The difference is this time I really do mean it. There seems little point in downsizing dramatically to get more space around the individual plants, better airflow, yeah, better light distribution, all that sort of stuff. Seems a bit pointless to do that and then squash them all in together with loads of new plants again. So we won't be buying many plants. I still have the one on the wish list, Dendrobium Victoria Regina, good one. I think I'm going to go and browbeat Sarah, quite honestly, and beat her up and actually say, you've got too many specimen versions of this, you haven't got room for them all, you need to break one up, and while you're breaking one up I'll have half and everybody else can have a tenth. It might work, you never know. You know, I've always said get to know and keep in touch with your traders, they can be useful to you, and that's the only place I've seen a good, real good size specimen type plant, and she's got probably about 10 of them, and boy do they make a show when they're all in bloom together. And maybe that's more important to her, is that massive show, and one going missing she might not want to do. It's got to be worth a try, so we'll have a go at that. Quite honestly, Sarah's versions of that plant are an awful lot better than the one at the Rithlington School, which is where some of the largest specimen sized plants I have ever seen in my life live, but not that one. The one they've got doesn't grow that well for them. And when I asked if they are actually going to reproduce from that one and try and get some seedlings going to sell on, I just got a maybe. But you have to bear in mind I got a maybe from a 10-year-old child, not from the man himself. I don't know how much control the school children have got at Ridlington. I got a feeling they're under instruction and supervision most of the time. They can't just do anything they like. Anyway, that's that little one done. That was a project plant. We will still keep our eye on it, although it's no longer a project plant, and we'll see how we do. I expect I'll come back in 2 or 3 weeks' time and all the leaves will have dropped off. Wonderful. But it is one I would like to keep. I do like the blooms on that. Okay, so that's that. The first repot of 2020. Very simple one, obviously, not a big deal. No, you know, loads of root trimming and deciding whether to split it and all that. That was just a simple, get it out of the old moss, put it in the new moss in a much, much, much smaller pot inside a black one. Job done. Thank you, Lynn. And I'll say it again, for those of you who didn't get the message on the Facebook group because you're not necessarily a member of the Facebook group, why not? The link to Lynn's channel with, at the moment, I think a single first video. So it's in its infancy to grow on. Like this, to grow on. Okay, so please go and take a look at Lynn's first ever video. It was put together not in a way that I do mine. When you've been doing videos for quite a long time, you can watch a video and you know exactly it. It was put together in stages with little clips taken at different times until there was enough there to warrant linking them together to make a single video. So I'm pretty sure that's how that one went together. You know what my videos are like? Point the camera, waffle, one take. If I get it wrong, tough. See you next time, and Happy New Year. I hope you all have a great growing season. I hope I have a great growing season as well. It's all very well wishing everybody else, but I need one as well. See you next time.